The blue light of the phone screen carved deep shadows into the room, reflecting off the wall and back into the dark. Mark sat motionless, his eyes tracking the rapid flicker of pixels. He swiped his thumb across the glass, moving through his save folder. It was a digital graveyard of ambition. 300 videos on time management, 500 articles on passive income, a library of self-help bestsellers, all downloaded, all waiting, all untouched. He tapped the screen again, scrolling past hours of content. His room remained frozen in time. Piles of laundry sat on the chair. A half-finished project gathered dust in the corner, and his bank account balance had not shifted in months. The air in the room felt stale, heavy with the weight of things he had intended to do. He stared at the folder, watching the list of titles stretch endlessly downward. Each one promised a shortcut, a secret, a transformation. The screen flashed, illuminating the exhaustion etched into his face, a silent testament to the hours spent consuming the lives of others. Mark tapped a new thumbnail titled, "The Secret to a $1 Million Mindset." The video began instantly. A voice filled the room, confident and sharp. Mark leaned forward, his eyes locked on the moving images. As the narrator outlined a roadmap to success, a sudden warmth spread through Mark's chest. He nodded, once, then twice, his heart rate quickening in sync with the speaker's cadence. The room around him seemed to shrink, replaced by the grand scale of the speaker's vision. He felt a surge of raw energy, a phantom power that made his own hands feel capable of building empires. He was no longer a man in a dark room. He was a titan of industry. He did not need to act because the video made him feel as if he had already succeeded. He closed the app with a sharp tap, exhaling a long, steady breath. He leaned back into his chair, his muscles relaxing into a posture of triumph. He sat in the silence, savoring the victory he had not yet earned. The glow of the phone faded, leaving the room in a sudden biting gray. Mark blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The artificial warmth in his chest evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache. He looked down at his desk. The surface was cluttered with empty coffee cups and loose papers. He turned his head to the chair beside him, where a pile of laundry had sat untouched. The fabric was stiff with dust. He pulled up his banking app on the phone, the numbers staring back at him in stark, unchanging white. The balance was identical to the month before. The silence of the room was no longer peaceful. It was heavy and accusatory. He looked at the half-finished project in the corner, a wooden frame covered in a thick layer of gray grit. He had not built a business. He had not moved a single inch toward his goals. He had simply watched someone else talk about their own. The realization hit him with the weight of a physical blow. He was a spectator in his own life. Mark shifted his gaze to the bookshelf. The spines of his collection stared back at him, a row of rigid, paper-bound judges. He pulled Atomic Habits from the shelf, his fingers tracing the embossed title. He remembered the advice: start small, build momentum. Then he reached for the 4-hour work week and flipped to a marked page. It demanded a total overhaul, a radical shift in perspective. One author insisted on waking at 4 in the morning to conquer the day. Another argued that sleep was the only foundation for true productivity. He stood between the two, the books heavy in his hands. I tried to reconcile the instructions, but they collided in his mind like jagged gears. He sat back down, the weight of the conflicting advice pressing into his shoulders. Every time he reached for a plan, he saw the potential for failure. What if he chose the wrong method? What if he wasted months on a strategy that led to a dead end? The fear of a wrong move tightened his chest. He stopped moving entirely. His hands rested on the desk, uncoordinated and still. He was drowning in a sea of how-to guides, paralyzed by the noise. The paralysis broke with a sudden, violent exhale. Mark looked at the bookshelf, Yashin, at the phone glowing on his desk. and felt a sharp, singular clarity. He grabbed the phone, his thumb hovering over the app icon. He did not hesitate. He opened the folder, selected the hundreds of saved videos, and hit delete. The screen flashed a confirmation, and the digital library vanished. He did not stop there. He reached for the books that had mocked him for months. He swept them off the desk in one swift, jarring motion. They hit the floor with a heavy, hollow thud scattering across the carpet. He pushed the coffee cups aside, the ceramic clattering against the wood. He wiped his palms across the surface of the desk, clearing away the dust and the loose papers until the wood was bare. The room felt different now. The noise was gone. The conflicting advice, the promises of passive income, the endless strategies, all of it was stripped away. He sat in the sudden, sharp silence. His heart hammered against his ribs, not with anxiety, but with the raw, jagged edge of intent. He looked at the empty desk. It was no longer a monument to his stagnation. It was a blank slate. He took a deep breath, the air feeling thinner and cleaner than it had in years. He was ready. Mark pulled his laptop toward the center of the desk. The metal felt cold against his palms. He didn't reach for a browser or a search bar. He navigated to a hidden folder, deep within the drive, labeled with a date from 6 months ago. His finger hovered over the trackpad. This was the project he had abandoned, the one he had convinced himself was too difficult to finish. He clicked. The software initialized, the screen flickering to life with a dull, gray glow. He waited for the familiar rush of a tutorial video to start, but there was only the interface. No narrator, no background music. Just the raw, unpolished environment of the code editor. He stared at the center of the screen. A single, thin vertical line sat in the corner of the workspace. It blinked. Once, twice. Each pulse was a rhythmic, taunting beat that seemed to measure the silence of the room. He placed his hands on the keys, the plastic cool and unyielding under his touch. He was finally here. Mark tapped the keys. His fingers felt stiff, unpracticed. He typed a single line of logic, a tentative command meant to bridge the gap between his intent and the machine. He pressed enter. The screen did not respond with the seamless flow he had seen in countless videos. Instead, a jagged, crimson line erupted across the bottom of the monitor. Error. He squinted, his pulse quickening. He deleted the line and tried again, his movements sharper, more aggressive. The software flashed a second warning, more complex than the first. The polished, effortless success he had been sold for years evaporated. There was no background music to guide him, no narrator to explain the solution. Just the cold, uncompromising reality of broken syntax. He leaned back, his jaw tight. The frustration was a physical weight, sharp and immediate. It was not the warm, comfortable glow of a motivational speech. It was messy, irritating, and slow. He stared at the error code, his eyes burning. He was just a man, finally feeling the friction of actual work. Mark reached for his phone, his thumb hovering over the app icon, but he stopped. He pulled his hand back, gripping the edge of the desk until his knuckles turned white. He would not watch another video. He turned back to the screen, his eyes scanning the error code with a new, focused intensity. He searched for the specific technical documentation, ignoring the long-form tutorials that promised shortcuts. His fingers moved across the keyboard, not with the frantic energy of a dreamer, but with the measured precision of a worker. He typed the correction, his breath held in the back of his throat. He hit the run command. The screen flickered. For a heartbeat, the silence in the room felt absolute, a vacuum waiting to be filled. Then, a small, vibrant green box appeared at the bottom of the interface. Success. He sat back, his heart rate steadying. The weight of the screen had shifted. It was no longer a wall, but a tool. Mark did not stop at the first success. He dove back into the logic, spending the next hour buried in the messy, grinding reality of the task. He failed again, adjusted, and pushed forward. His brow was damp with sweat, and his neck ached from the hunched posture, but he did not reach for his phone. He did not look for a shortcut. He embraced the friction, the slow, deliberate pace of building something from nothing. Every error was a puzzle, not a sign of failure. Every correction was a victory, not a theory. He realized then that the anxiety which had paralyzed him for years was never about a lack of knowledge or a missing perfect plan. It was simply a lack of movement. He had been waiting for a signal that would never come, while the only signal that mattered was the one he created through his own hands. He typed the final command, watched the process complete, and leaned back. The room felt different. The piles of laundry and the dust on his projects were still there, but they no longer mocked him. They were just things to be dealt with, one by one. He closed the laptop. The screen went dark, but his mind remained sharp. He stood up, stretched his tired muscles, and felt the weight of actual effort in his limbs. He was no longer a consumer of other people's dreams, waiting for the perfect moment to begin. He had stopped watching the race from the sidelines and finally stepped onto the track. He was in the race, and for the first time, he was moving.